What's going on, Collectibles friends? We are back again. It's another day, another Collectibles video. I'm going to pretend like I'm doing okay, but I'm fighting through a flu bug, so if I sound a little nasally and you see a bunch of edits on the video, it's because I was coughing or something else. But I appreciate you tuning in for part one of this story that continues to really shake the comic book collector industry, market, collector fan base. It's really a pretty big deal. And we're now about a week removed from the information coming out on, this slipping a comic in for another one, kind of turning restored and qualified books into blue labels. And we still haven't heard anything from CGC yet. It is Christmas Eve, so I'm sure a lot of people are out for the holidays and that sort of stuff. I would assume, though, that there are people in the company that are working behind the scenes to figure out what the heck is going on, especially with the reholder service in particular. I want to first touch on a couple of points. Before we dive into some new information, I want to just talk about third-party grading as a whole, because if you're an outsider looking in, you might think like, who cares? Just buy comic books that are not graded. This is probably a good thing. We don't need these scammy companies coming in and trying to take more money from us for grading and the extra premiums paid and that sort of thing.
The Empire is on the verge of success.
I take a different approach, though. I'm rooting for CGC and for grading companies in general to do well. And the reason is because when I was a kid back in 1990, when I was 9, I would go to the card shop and I would have to grapple with the dealer as far as like near mint. Is this card fair? And you're paying whatever price the dealer says it is, or you just don't pay it. The third-party grading piece, it adds uniformity to it. And so the idea that the industry would be better off without third-party grading, I just don't agree, because I remember a time before third-party grading for collectibles, and it was wild, wild west. You could argue this is wild, wild west, but it was much more wild back then, because, someone doctors a comic book, somebody takes a page out, you don't have any sort of idea. You don't have a third party that's checking in and looking at it. And that's the saddest part of this story, is this whole Trojan horse BS that's going on is just undermining the expertise that is over there. I firmly believe that CGC has good qualified graders over there. They're number one for comic book grading for a reason, and they've built a brand over time based on consistency and that sort of thing. And it sucks and it's sad somebody was able to sneak in and ruin that, essentially, because until this gets solved, this is not something that can just be swept under the rug. This is not something that, we'll just wait for this to pass the news cycle. No, this is the news cycle. I mean, this is kind of like on a much smaller scale. This is like a Bernie Madoff Collectibles type situation. The SEC couldn't just say like, we found this guy, and I know he bilked people out of billions of dollars, but we just can't really talk about that. We can't talk about it. This is something that has to get sorted. There's not a question mark around it. It's not something that just goes away. Now you have a ton, and especially the biggest thing is you have a lot of high-end books that are involved in this. It's not as if we're talking about, people losing $100, $200, $500. We could be talking about in total a 7-figure scam here. I mean, if you really look at it, and we're going to talk about some of the data here. For me personally, now I just acquired my largest comic book I ever have, a giant size X-Men #1 and an 8.5. But most of what I'm buying or have bought over time, I've got maybe 50, 60 CGC slabs, but it's more kind of the pop culture. I'm living more in the, the $200, graded comic book range, maybe like $200 to $500, which maybe some of these books could also be targets, but this particular person was really raking it in on more higher end bronze, silver age keys. A couple of great resources I was just recently watching. So there was a live stream, I think this might have been yesterday now. It was put on by West Coast Devengers or Davengers. He had a new and Swaggle came on, but just a really good talk overall. But where I got some really interesting information was Como Comic Books, and I'll put links to both of these videos down in the video description so you can check it out. But what Como was looking at, which actually was way kind of like, okay, now we're diving into a little bit of a worst case scenario type view, is people have been doing research on the seller and on the CGC forums in particular, and it looks like it's possible, again, until we get all the information, until we get some more kind of defined facts, it could be that this person was selling under a different username going all the way back to 2011, 12, almost 13 years ago. There's talk of 1,200 plus listings. I mean, we could be talking in the thousands of books. I've heard in different comment sections, chats, hey, I've got, $20,000 in this. I've got, $100,000. Now, all this information will come out eventually. And the good news, I think, is CGC, they have an avenue to be able to figure this out. They've got the customer information, and they've got, it's the reholdering program that got us. So they can go through, all right, who ordered a lot of reholders? Are there connections between this user and that user? Because that's another question. You've got this one particular seller that has been identified, but are there multiple sellers? Is it a larger thing? Does he have buddies that also do this sort of thing? It's got to get sorted out, but it's clear that the problem, like the infiltration, the Trojan horse got through the reholder program. So all the information is there for CGC to kind of dig through, and I'm sure that they are. I have to believe that they are trying to get to the bottom of, the customers involved, the books that are involved, and that's really when the healing process starts. Because right now, just knowing this information, who is excited to go buy a fairly high-end comic book right now? I'm not. I'll tell you what, I'm certainly not. I want to wait and see what's going on here, because these books that have been affected, they need to be marked in some way. They have to have some sort of an asterisk by them, and they probably still hold value, obviously. There's going to be values attached to these, but we need to know which ones are tampered with, which ones are affected to move forward in this process. What do auction houses do? I think this is a tremendous issue. I think I saw Heritage has like the largest, one of these large, auctions coming. There's people that have big auctions coming up that have a fair amount of comic books in them. What are they supposed to do about this? Just kind of, what? What are you guys talking about? I mean, what are they supposed to do? And who's liable, really? Who's paying the refunds? Is it eBay? Is it, CGC? All of these things have to be sorted out, and it's going to take time to do that. So for me, I just have to assume that the short-term implications is that there's probably going to be somewhat of a stalemate as far as sales goes for some of these larger books. I mean, I'd like to know in the comment section, and look, maybe I'm completely wrong on this. Maybe people think this is completely overblown or it's wrong, and maybe it is. I guess we don't know anything until we have a full-blown investigation done. It's just that what I've seen online so far from people that have been doing this research, it seems pretty clear that there's an issue here. It seems pretty undeniable. And hey, another thing I was thinking of is, man, we're probably looking at census reports a little bit differently now, right? I mean, when you look at a book and it's like, oh, there's 2,000 on the population report. Okay, well, how many of those were sent back in, and how many are actually out there? This is like a whole a can of worms that is opened up. And then I guess the other side of that is, does it raise the value of legitimate copies? Because you've got, right now, there are quite a few, it looks like, illegitimate copies, stuff that's been swapped around and is in the wrong case right now. And how many books is that? Is it 50? Is it 6? Is it 1,000? Because we've got to identify it. It's got to come off the market, or at least be marked. There has to be some sort of identifier, and it's going to take time. Like I said, this will not happen overnight. It is going to take some time to figure all this out. So I'm sure there will be more information. I'm certain that CGC eventually is going to have a public statement about it. There's just no way. There's just no way, because it's not something that will just go away. It's going to be talked about, and I guess, that could be an option, is say nothing and try to internally kind of fix some things and, close your eyes and hope for the best. But I think that would really erode confidence in the space overall. And like I said, I am a firm believer in third-party grading. I think it's extremely important to a healthy ecosystem of collectibles in general, whether we're talking about trading cards or video games or comic books, whatever it is, action figures. And I would like to see that evolve more. You want to see grading companies get better, improve, and it's clear that security needs to be on the forefront. We've seen this on the sports card side, on the trading card side. There's fake slabs out there. There's fake labels in slabs. There's fake cards living in fake slabs. It's out there, and companies have got to figure out different ways to make these things tamper-proof, or at least identifiable. A way that you can, okay, someone screwed with this, but we've got some sort of DNA on that particular slab. And I think that that's what's going to have to come, because if it doesn't come, it will erode confidence. I think in collectibles as a whole, not even just, what we're talking about here with comic books. And I think it's a big, also, it's a red alert out there to grading companies of all kinds. What's your reholdering policy? Because it's clear that people are looking for a way to sneak things past. They're looking for a way to kind of Trojan horse their collectible in and get it in a slab. We've seen this all over the place. We saw it recently in the cardboard situation where a guy was trying to get, a jersey that was supposedly photo matched, and all of a sudden turns a Michael Jordan jersey that was a $25,000 jersey into $1 million jersey because it was game used attached to this or whatever. And people are trying like hell to legitimize their collectibles that might not be legit through these grading companies. So security should be 2024's number one focus for any sort of grading company in the collectible space. All right, guys, there will be more information to come on this. And again, I'm sorry for the nasaliness. We will fight through. We'll see you next time. Stay healthy, more healthy than me. Stay awesome. And I will talk to you again later.